welcome to the WPIAL Blitz Show. My name's Bruce Badgley. Hey, there's my man, Ian McMeans, and we are ready to talk. Are you kidding me? 5 weeks of football here?
Yeah, this is the halfway point in the season. 5 games down, five to go. Hard to believe we've hit the midway point already in the season.
Well, I guess the midway point of the regular season. Let's be specific because the playoffs now have kind of taken on a life of their own. I mean the postseason really is almost as long as the regular season anymore.
That's true. With how long the playoffs take all the way through the state finals. You're right. It's almost like a second season.
I know, and the other thing, and this is just since this is our show and we can rant about things that we want to. I honestly can't believe why the PIAA started basketball season before the conclusion of the football season. I just for the life of me can't understand that. Football is the premier sport in the state of Pennsylvania. How can you have opening night of basketball season on the state semifinals of football? That just defies logic to me. That in the make it on Saturday night for the basketball, okay? But don't put them both on Friday night. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it makes no sense. It feels like they've done this for a few years now. At
Yeah.
least it might have been in years past. It may have been like state finals weekend, but I remember, back the year when Darrell Revis was at Aliquippa, he played in the, opening night of basketball and in the state championship football game. And I mean, that was, 20 plus years ago, but still it was one of those things where they've done this before for years, and it's like a couple more days isn't going to kill you to delay basketball season. And I know it only affects a couple players, but still, like you said, football is your premier sport around the state.
Yeah. And I get that, right. And I get that there are only a few teams remaining at that particular point. The vast majority of schools have completed it. But it's the idea of taking away from the PIAA's premier sporting event,
Hmm.
okay, and taking away from the start of basketball season. Both should have their own, night in the sun.
Yeah,
And I'm still angry about that, but anyway, I don't know why I had to get off on that, uh because we've had such an interesting football season to date. I can only imagine what the rest of the regular season and then the postseason is going to bring us.
yeah. And we've got a big show tonight, so we've got a lot of exciting stuff to get through. Week 4 recap is along with looking ahead at for the first time this year, the conference standings and where things sit as we head, into the second half of the regular season and the playoff races start to heat up, and the debut of our statewide power rankings. So here we
Oh,
go.
baby, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I even threw in some Eastern rankings as well for the fans. We're going to start throwing those in there here periodically. So we're already looking ahead.
We are. We are indeed. So here we go. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you have found us, you obviously know where we are on YouTube. You can also check out our social media channels, as well as my WPIAL standings page and WPIAL Games of the Week articles on SteelCityBlitz.com. As we get closer to the end of the regular season, I'll have articles on playoff clinching scenarios and all that good stuff too, to help folks know what the WPIAL teams need to do
Yeah,
to
and
get into the
actually,
playoffs.
I do have a Facebook page, and which quite honestly gets a lot of action. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to maybe get this on Facebook as
Yeah,
well.
that would
I
be
mean,
great.
our streaming allows us to, I think, multi-stream too. So maybe next week I'm charged with getting this simulcast on Facebook and YouTube here this week. How about that?
That sounds like a good task for you to undertake. I think that
I think
sounds
so
like a
too. I
great
think
thing
it'll
to
bring
do.
in a whole new audience in here, And I don't know, and I'll have to check that out. Maybe there's some live chat on Facebook as well, interaction too, that we can even get more fans involved.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So, all right. So our biggest wins of the week, starting with Avonworth, who we had their head coach, Duke Johncore, on last week. He was very gracious with his time and talking with us about their two big wins in non-conference play over 4A powerhouses, Thomas Jefferson and Aliquippa. And then they kick off conference play by just dominating a Hopewell team that had been putting up a ton of points so far this year. And Hopewell's quarterback was our player of the week last week. So Avonworth with a great defensive effort held James Armstrong in check, as well as putting up 48 points on the board. So the defending 3A WPIAL champs certainly looking the part once again so far this season, looking very, very strong. The other big wins, South Allegheny with a 56-7 throttling of the 2A defending champ South Park. This one really opened my eyes that like South Allegheny is absolutely a contender in 2A. I mean, I knew they were undefeated, but this was kind of an eye opener of like, I wasn't sure about the quality of their opponents so far to date, and they'd been blowing them all out. But this one, beating South Park this handily, was extremely impressive for South Allegheny. And spoiler alert, we'll talk a little bit more about South
Well,
Allegheny a little later in the
spoiler
show.
alert, but I think maybe we are a week late on panic button for South Park
we that is very possible because
because they've got blown out the last 2 weeks, right?
yeah, by two conference opponents, by Steel Valley and then by South Allegheny. So, for South Park, they've kind of landed in a situation now where they pretty much have to like win out in
Yeah,
order to like get one of the guaranteed playoff spots from their conference. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as
yeah,
we get
correct.
into the conference standings here in a bit. But they've not really left themselves a lot of wiggle room here, I'll say. The other big one is Beaver Falls, who went winless last year, defeating Mohawk 8-6. Mohawk was up 6-0 at halftime. Beaver Falls scored a second half touchdown and went for two and the win and got it. So congratulations to Beaver Falls snapping their lengthy losing streak with a win over Mohawk. Our two best games of the week, North Allegheny trailed Norwin for almost the entire game until about a couple minutes left when they scored a rushing touchdown and went ahead, and then Norwin couldn't come back. But an incredible effort by Norwin, who didn't win a game in conference play last year in 6A. They had a lot of injuries last year, but bounced back this season and have put on a couple strong performances, beat Seneca Valley last week. And then this showing against North Allegheny, I think, even though they lost, really puts Norwin in position to be a contender for a playoff spot.
Wow. Well, yeah. Well, they're fortunate that you know a high percentage of the teams make it in 6A there. So
Yeah, it's 4 out of 7. So yeah. And then Aliquippa against Penn Hills. Aliquippa also trailed for almost the entire game and hit a game-winning touchdown pass as time expired to beat Penn Hills in a comeback victory. So two games that basically came down to the wire were our two games of the week. The upset of the week I gave to Apollo Ridge over Shadyside. And we talked a bit about Shadyside 2 weeks ago when they forfeited to Clairton and claimed they didn't have enough players. And then they went out the following week and put up like 56 points against Ligonier Valley. And it was like, did you really not have enough players to play Clairton, or did you just not want to get your butts whipped? But Shadyside, in games they had played on the field, were 3-0, counting the forfeit to Clairton, they were 3-1. And so for Apollo Ridge, who finished at the bottom of their conference last year, to come out and beat Shadyside was an impressive victory for Apollo
sure
Ridge.
was, sure was.
Some other noteworthy results in a rematch of last year's quarterfinal game in the 4A playoffs, Mars beating Montour. So a good win for Mars. I think that really will come in handy come playoff seeding time. When the WPIAL starts to compare some of these teams across conferences, and Mars against Montour, they both have the behemoth powerhouses of Aliquippa for Montour and McKeesport for Mars and their conferences. But if these are two second place teams, the WPIAL could look at this game and be like, well, Mars beat them head to head, so we're going to give them, the number 4 seed in a home playoff game. So this could wind up being a big one for the Fighting Planets. Southmoreland beating Ringgold in one of the best storyline games of the week. Those two teams wasn't too long ago. They were bottom dwellers in both of their respective conferences and have both bounced back in a big way this season. They were a combined 7-1 coming into that game. Southmoreland now moves to 5-0 on the season. So congratulations to the Scotties as they kick off conference play this week coming. And then Central Valley, who was on our panic watch a few weeks ago when they were 0-3, has now bounced back with a impressive win over Beaver to put themselves at the top of the Western Hills Conference for now, though they will have some tough competition coming up with a game against Avonworth.
Well, our good friend Coach Lyons there, I tell you what, the good for Central Valley. Glad to see that they're getting where they should be.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and winning games in impressive fashion as well.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So last week we had a first ever on the WPIAL Blitz show where we gave the Player of the Week award to a player who
Is
did
that
not
why
win.
You took a drink of water because you just had?
I was preparing myself for this. So this week we also have a first for our Player of the Week award, in that it goes to 2 players from the same team, because I talked about how impressive South Allegheny's performance was over South Park, and it really was a total team effort. I couldn't pick just one guy. Joey Gammert had 4 rushing touchdowns, and then Drew Cook scored 3 times and had a fumble recovery on defense. So we have some highlights here, thanks to the magic of Huddle. So we'll start with Drew Cook's 3 touchdown performance. So starting with his receiving touchdown coming out of the slot. Nice little ball down the middle of the field, wide open.
Great throw by the quarterback under pressure.
Yep. And then punt return for a touchdown, scoops it up on the run, and just blows by everybody.
Wow.
And then again out of the slot, this time his rushing touchdown, gets the handoff up the middle, hurdles over his own lineman, and takes it the rest of the way to the house.
Real good play call there with the inside handoff coming, a misdirection like that. That works a lot.
Yep, it does. And then Joey Gammert's 4 touchdown performance. These all came in the first half. The first one really set the tone where he just bowled over the South Park defender right at the goal line. And South Park there's another shot of it. South Park was at home here too. So, doing this to South Park in front of their home fans, that are still celebrating their WPIAL championship from last year. This was an incredibly impressive performance from South Allegheny, just coming out and dominating, especially in the trenches. You watch these linemen just exerting their will at the line of scrimmage and giving these guys the holes to run through that they needed, as South Allegheny just really took it to South Park all night. And it was a total team effort from the line up front to the 2 guys who got most of the touchdowns between Gammert and Cook. It was impressive overall. So I couldn't pick just one of them to give the Player of the Week to. And really, it's a total team effort. I should have just given it to the whole South Allegheny line as well, because, you just look and they're just blowing South Park off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, right. The line of scrimmage is moving 3, 4, 5 yards downfield.
Yep.
Well, as I said, South Park, they've really got some work left. They really have to just kind of pull themselves up after a couple of tough losses.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll have some opportunities to get things back on track here, but they haven't left a lot of wiggle room. So some other top performances: David Dennison, running back from Bethel Park, had over 300 yards and 6 touchdowns in their victory this past week. Mason Mitchell, freshman quarterback from Gateway, had to step in because of an injury to the starter, threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. And all of a sudden, Gateway's won 2 in a row and kind of crept back into things here. So we'll talk about them a little bit more later. Tim Andersey from Leechburg, he had that awesome, 6 or 7 touchdown performance a few
Yeah.
weeks ago. Put 4 on the board this week and a big win for them over Jeanette. And Aiden Yoakum for Mars had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in their victory over Montour, which we talked about. And then had to mention the kickers because we had the 2 guys from the kicking camp on earlier this year. And we had 2 incredibly long field goals that were made this past week. Hopewell's kicker, Rocco Mark Antonio, sorry, almost messed that up.
That's all right.
He tied his own WPIAL record of 55 yards. He made a 55-yarder last year and then made another one this past week in their loss to Avonworth. And then Central Valley's kicker, Dominic Pratt, booted 3 field goals, the longest of which was 49 yards. I mean, we got high school kickers making 50-yard kicks here. This is crazy to me.
Look, you look at at how field goal kicking has just blown up, and you start at the professional level where these guys are like knocking it through 70 in the 60s, and it's just trickling down. These guys, and a lot of it, quite honestly, and I'm sure you can ask the guys that are doing the kicking camp, but a lot of this is technique. I mean, this isn't the fact that these guys are getting that much stronger. They're just better athletes. I mean, they are just in rhythm. And it's just like you look at some of these professional golfers that are hitting the ball 350 yards. They're not the biggest guys in the world, but it's the timing, and I'm sure that that's really part of it. And what's part of it as well is that you've got the dedication by the teams to work on it, okay? Because it isn't just the guy kicking the ball. I mean, it's got to be placed correctly, and that snap has to be right on the numbers. So it is a very integral part of the game, but I think timing and technique are a lot to do with the improvement in field goal kicking.
I agree with you 100%. I'm going to throw one other thing out there for consideration, and this is just a thought that's been bouncing around my head, but I'll phrase it as a question. Do you think the fact that so many schools have moved to artificial turf and away from natural grass has also helped?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it clearly has,
More
only
consistency. It's
for the
yeah,
footing
yeah.
aspect of it. Okay. I mean, they can be confident with that plant foot every single time, and that's what they have to have confidence of. So,
Well, not
but it
only
is a
that,
lot of fun.
but I think also the just consistency of the grass height too, with where the ball's
Oh,
going to be
sure.
placed. You can be sure you're always going to, you're not going to catch a clump of grass right behind the ball. And I mean, you play golf as well as I do, right? Like, you hit it in the rough, you kind of never know. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to swing and hope that it's like smooth
That's
through here
right.
and it's not going to catch a clump. It's kind of the same thing on a football field, right? That if you know you're going to have a smooth surface every time, it definitely helps. I mean, you're absolutely right with the technique. I think that's the biggest thing, but I was also just kind of thinking about like field surfaces and at the NFL level, how many teams have moved to dome stadiums and, reducing the
Well,
wind
right. There's
factor and
dome
things like
stadiums,
that.
but also too, the professional. There's a lot more grass fields in professional football than there is even in college football. Yet the kickers are just blasting it away. And I don't think that all of these kickers with these 60 and 70-yard field goals are kicking in domes. I think that there's still, a good bit of kickers that are strictly outside. And I think it's a benefit to kick outside early in the season in professional football. Definitely not late though.
Yeah. Yep. I would definitely agree with that. All right. So our streak watch for week 4. We mentioned Beaver Falls snapping their 15-game losing streak with that win over Mohawk. That was the only streak that came to an end this week. 3 teams have winning streaks against WPIAL opponents that have carried over for multiple seasons now. Overall, we have 12 remaining undefeated teams. We lost one from that rank this past week when Monessen lost to Fort Cherry in a battle of undefeated teams. And then 14 winless teams remaining. 6 teams got off the schneid this week with their first victory of the season. So congratulations to those 6 teams. Still a long season left. Let's not forget, like last year, Laurel lost their first 4 games and then bounced back, won 5 in a row, and had a game in week 9 for the conference title against Neshannock because
Yeah.
they won all their conference games. So, non-conference play is ending now. We're getting into conference play. So even if you've had a rough start to the season, still a lot left to go. The other thing I should mention with Fort Cherry is you may have seen this. Matt Seg, their star senior quarterback who's committed to Penn State, broke Tyler Boyd's WPIAL record for most touchdowns scored by a player in a career with now 118. So Matt Seg
That
is now the all-time leading scorer in WPIAL history. So that's pretty cool.
Matt's a senior this year, right?
Yes, he is. Yeah. And
Okay. He's been around for so long. I'm sitting there like thinking, I mean, I thought he was a senior.
Yeah. And it's kind of weird that we haven't talked about him that much because we've spent so much time on the show the last 3 years talking about how good Matt Seg has been. And I looked at his stats, and I think part of it is that Fort Cherry's kind of doing what Bell Vernon did with Quentin Martin a few years ago, if you remember, where they're kind of
Yeah, right.
limiting his touches early in the season. And Fort Cherry's blowing everybody out. Their average score is like 47-7. So
Yeah,
like they don't need to have him, you know,
he doesn't
carry the
need to
load.
pad his stats. They need him in November, not
Right.
in September.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so he hasn't had those 6 touchdown games that we were kind of used to seeing out of him yet. But nevertheless, I think I looked at his stats last week, and I think he was averaging a touchdown like every 3 touches between
That's
passes and
insane.
rushes, right? That I think he had like 24 pass attempts and 8 touchdowns, so that's basically 1 every 4 attempts. And then he had like 20 rushing attempts and 8 or 9 touchdowns. It was something crazy like that. That it's like,
It,
he's not throwing that much, he's not running that much. They've been handing off to some other guys, but he's still got it, right? He hasn't lost it. It's still there. It's just that they're just limiting his touches so far and working some other guys into the offense.
incredible that the statement could even creep into our consciousness that Matt Sig is flying under the radar.
I just felt like it had been 4 weeks and we hadn't talked about him
Yeah,
that
right.
much, so it
Sure.
was it was worth it. But yeah, it's he's still putting up numbers, just not in the quantities that we've seen. But I have
Yeah,
I have no doubt as we get into the end of the season and the playoffs, like that's when Fort Cherry, now being the 2-time defending WPIAL champions, being knocked out twice in the state playoffs, I think they're saving him to try and make a run, not only at a WPIAL title, but also at a state title.
we need to get our video game buddy back on and see if he could do anything with like Fort Cherry and Matt Sig, and maybe he already has.
He may have. We'll have to check in with him.
I'll have to
Yeah,
check in with him again.
that was the WPIAL team builder. If folks want to
Yeah.
check him out on social media as
And if
well.
he's out there, man, just hey, look, just let us know and we'll get you on, like in the second half of the broadcast anytime.
Yes, yeah. As continuing on the winning streak side, for conference games, since we're now into conference play, the aforementioned Neshannock and Fort Cherry holding the longest conference winning streaks at 18 games. Clareton right behind them at 17. So 3 of the 4 1A conferences have teams leading their conferences with pretty long winning streaks, which is kind of interesting. But all these streaks continued on, some non-conference games sprinkled in, but nevertheless, nothing really of note here, but something we'll keep an eye on as the season rolls on.
Sure. Sure.
All right, so now we're getting into the thick of things. Week 5 here coming up is when all teams across all conferences will be in
all
conference
all the
play.
games count now for
Yeah,
everybody.
Pretty much. There will be a sprinkling of a couple non-conference games because like some of the conferences have 7 teams, so like there's going to be one team there that doesn't play a conference game each week. But like pretty much from here on out, yeah, all the games matter. So just as a quick reminder, in 6A there are 7 total teams. The top 4 make the playoffs. In 5A there are 19 teams. 3 from each conference make the playoffs as guaranteed spots, and then the WPIAL selection committee picks 3 wildcard teams. In 4A, only 8 teams make the playoffs because the 4A champion enters the state bracket at the quarterfinals instead of at the semifinals like the other classifications. So only 2 from each conference are guaranteed playoff spots, and then 2 at-large wild cards. So 4A is the one that is absolutely the tightest playoff race, and there's going to be a good team or two that doesn't make it just because of how tight that has to be.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with you on that.
Yep. In 3A, 12 teams make the playoffs, so 3 guaranteed from each conference and 3 wild cards. In 2A, they basically add an additional wild card, 3 from each conference and 4 wild cards. And then in 1A, 16 total teams, so no buys in the 1A playoffs, but 3 from each of the 4 conferences and then 4 wild cards to round out the field. So how are these guaranteed playoff spots decided? Oops, I thought I had a slide on that. Apparently I don't. Or I misplaced it, and you don't need to see me play around
That's
with
okay. We'll
PowerPoint.
find
So
it eventually.
it'll show up eventually. Yeah. All right. So we'll start in 6A. So standings are based first off of conference record, and then off of Gardner points, which Gardner points is a strength of victory metric. So basically, you get 10 Gardner points for each conference win the teams you beat have. So North Allegheny beat Norwin, who has 1 conference win. So North Allegheny has 10 Gardner points, whereas the 2 teams Central Catholic beat don't have any conference wins, so they don't have any Gardner points. The WPIAL tiebreaker points is the margin of victory metric, so that's up to plus 10 or minus 10, depending on the result of the game. So like North Allegheny beat Norwin by 3 points, so they only got plus 3 this week. Whereas if you win by 10 or more, you get up to 10 points. So the overall record, points for, points against, don't really matter for conference standings. It's all based on what you do in conference play. So that guarantee that determines the 3 guaranteed playoff spots, and then the WPIAL selects the wild cards as they will. So starting in 6A here, North Allegheny and Central Catholic have been the 2 dominant teams now for the better part of the last 3 years, and they once again are the top 2 teams. They meet this week, and the winner will win the conferce title.
Yeah, right.
Like
Exactly. That's
this
the
is pretty
thing.
much for
It's
the conference title.
yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of how should I say it? I mean, uh really anticlimactic. I mean, for 4 other weeks of conference play, and then obviously to determining number 1 seed throughout, but
Mm-hmm.
only 4 teams make it. So Jesus, I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
very anticlimactic, I think,
Yeah.
in 6A.
Well, I think the race here becomes who gets the other 2 playoff spots.
Well, come on. No,
Yeah.
wait a minute. We're just going to stop right there.
Yeah.
Who gets the other 2 playoff spots? I mean, what does that matter? I mean, insofar as there's such a clear advantage of North Allegheny and Central Catholic over the regular in the Quad County
Yeah.
Conference that, all right, yeah, you've got a couple of participation trophies that you're going to hand out for 2 teams that are going to make the 4, but it's the same old story, same old song and dance. I mean, North Allegheny and Central Catholic, um, and yeah, and what it does, I mean, for me anyway, there's really no drama involved here. It just comes down to the fact of, all right, these 2 teams are going to play this week, and then in like 6 more weeks when they play for the WPIAL championship, right? I mean,
Most
more or
most
less.
likely, yes. The only thing I'll say is that something we've talked about before, that different teams have different definitions of success, and Norwin who, almost knocked off North Allegheny this past week. Norwin hasn't made the playoffs since 2017. Hempfield hasn't made the playoffs since 2016. So for one of those two schools, if they get into that, four spot and make the playoffs, like that's a huge successful season for them for,
It
making the
is.
playoffs in the first time in 8 or 9 years. So I think,
I get it.
yeah, so I think, there is a little bit of drama to be had if one of those teams kind of puts themselves into the mix and says, okay, hey, we're gonna rise up and do something here that no one for our school has done for two successive graduating classes, right? If you haven't done it in 8 years, you've had two groups of kids go through the school completely without, making the playoffs.
Look, and the reason, and I bring this up, okay, only because that, you know, obviously 6A is the premier, classification in the state of Pennsylvania for football. Um, but you look at District 1, and obviously, hey, look, I'm an Eastern guy that everybody knows that. But in District 1, you've got 32 6A teams that slug it out to a final 16 that play then four difficult, tournament games to just get into the PIAA. Where here, let's be real here, that North Allegheny and Central Catholic are not slugging it out uh, over a conference schedule of 7 games. I mean, they're just not. And that is, it's a benefit, okay, to those schools by not having the physical toll of a difficult uh, regular season and postseason to have to deal with. And that's kind of why I'm kind of alluding to this, is that there's a significant advantage for North Allegheny and Central Catholic in the scheme of things in how they're going to be able to physically perform once they do make it to the PIAA tournament.
That's
So,
that
all right.
is
I mean,
yeah. Yeah, no, that's very fair. I completely understand where you're coming from
I know.
there.
I just thought
Yeah.
I'd state that point, and
Yeah. Yep.
there is a definite advantage to that. So,
Yes. Yep. All right. On to 5A, where a couple conferences have played conference games. The Allegheny Six Conference has not. So we get a massive kickoff this week with undefeated Upper St. Clair taking on undefeated Peters Township. Upper St. Clair won the regular season matchup last year, won the conference title. Peters Township won the rematch in the semifinals last year to go to the championship game and get a rematch with Pine Richland. So this game is another huge one. I'm not going to say this one's going to decide the conference title because you've got a good Bethel Park team,
yeah.
a good South Fayette team, and a pretty good Moon team all lurking there in the conference. And let's not forget, the Allegheny Six Conference put 5 teams in the playoffs last year. So these are 5 good squads that could all make the postseason. And B, this conference has put a team in the WPIAL championship game for like 6 or 7 straight years now. So, someone here is definitely capable of making a run deep into the playoffs. And there's a few very talented teams here. It could be any one of those 5 that just all put it together at the right point in time. So for me, conference play is going to be big here just to kind of start sorting out, like separating the wheat from the chaff, and
Hmm.
who's really the top tier teams.
Sure.
In the Big East Conference, I mentioned that Gateway had
Yeah.
rebounded from that 0-3 start. They're 2-0 in conference play with wins over Franklin Regional and Kiski. They'll play Armstrong this week, who got a nice win over Latrobe this past week. So a lot still to be decided here. Woodland Hills has that victory over Penn Trafford in their conference opener. So I really think that's going to carry a lot of weight as the season moves on. I think Woodland Hills is the best team in the conference, but Gateway winning those first 2 games of conference play, that's only going to continue to build confidence for them. They may be able to sneak into the conversation for that 3rd spot. I think Penn Trafford probably is the second best team here, but Penn Trafford and Gateway will have to play at some point also. So a lot still to be decided, but Gateway starting off 2-0 is a nice little bounce back after they had some struggles last season.
Yeah. No, I tell you what, I'm really looking forward to. Obviously, I was a little bit down on the 6A, but I'm really looking forward to how 5A plays out
Hmm.
in the WPIAL. I think that there's some really great teams and great games coming up, and just I'm kind of frothing at the mouth over 5A in the WPIAL this year. I think it's really going to be something to watch.
It definitely is. And the one thing I will point out, as we talk about, making the playoffs and wild cards and all that, if you do look at the overall records, you only have two teams in this conference between Woodland Hills and Penn Trafford that have winning records overall. Compare that back to the Allegheny Six, where, five out of the six teams have winning records. So
Mm-hmm.
you can see why last year the Allegheny Six conference got two of the three wild card spots awarded to
Sure.
the other teams, and they're kind of on track to do that, I think, again this year, that getting in those top three, especially in the Big East, and then as we move into the Northeast Conference, where once again Pine Richland is the only one with a winning record overall. Having a winning record, and especially coming in the top three, is going to be really important, because there's no guarantee in those other two conferences between the Big East and the Northeast that you're going to get a wild card spot.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Yep. Here, Pine Richland off to an incredibly strong start, kind of as expected. Their only loss this year is to Central Catholic. I think they're just going to roll through this schedule. Penn Hills, I think, showed they still got it with a win over Fox Chapel, but then had that late loss to Aliquippa in non-conference play this past week. So sitting at 1-4 is pretty atypical for Penn Hills. I think they're good enough to get into the playoffs. Who the third team in here is going to be really interesting, because North Hills just got their first win of the season with a big win over Fox Chapel. Shaler beat Plum head-to-head 2 weeks ago. That was our upset of the week. So this one's going to be interesting to see how it kind of shakes out for the guaranteed playoff spots. But I think Pine Richland should just walk their way to this conference title.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, on to 4A, where this will be the first week of any conference games for any 4A teams. So, a lot of these teams did have some tough non-conference games against teams from higher classifications and whatnot. So, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in the overall record. I'll just note here that Bell Vernon and Trinity were both playoff teams last year, sitting at the bottom of the conference. So, they have a lot to do from just a confidence standpoint to get back to their winning ways, to vault themselves back up into the conversation. Bell Vernon doesn't have an easy go of it with starting against Thomas Jefferson, but we'll see how the rest of it shakes out. Chartiers Valley looks a lot better this year than they did last
Yeah.
year. Same with Ringgold. So
Yeah.
Laurel Highlands has kind of had an unfortunate situation where they looked okay the first 2 weeks, and then had a lot of injuries hit them and have just really struggled the last 3 weeks. So if I had to guess, I'd say Laurel Highlands probably drops off a little bit, down the standings, and we'll see how it sorts out. And remember, in 4A, only the top two are guaranteed playoff
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah. Shout out to Chartiers Valley. They just kind of snuck
Mhm.
up on everybody in the non-conference there. So we got our eye on them, that's for
Mhm.
sure.
Yep, definitely. In the Greater Allegheny Conference, Mars has played a brutally tough non-conference schedule. We've talked quite a bit about them this year so far, but they're off to a really nice 4-1 start. Just got that win over Montour. Had a close loss to Aliquippa last week. McKeesport had that really tough non-conference slate. Also has been, kind of biding their time until their star running back Keemon Spell gets back from injury. So that McKeesport Mars game in a few weeks will most likely decide the conference title once again, just as it did last year. And I really think those two are the ones that will get the two guaranteed playoff spots. And probably the Hampton West Mifflin game will probably wind up deciding who's
Hmm.
in the running for a wild card. But with only two wild cards in all of 4A, it's going to be a tough road to hoe for whoever the third place team is here,
Yep.
especially considering Chartiers Valley just beat Hampton in non-conference play. That's when some of those non-conference games that happened over the last few weeks may come into to play
Yeah.
with
And who gets in and
deciding.
who gets a wild card and who doesn't?
Yep, absolutely. And then in the Parkway Conference, these are a little bit out of order, but that's okay because no one's played conference games yet. Montour lost to Mars. Newcastle and Aliquippa play this week, so the two teams that only have one loss on their slates so far are going to square off in the opener. But really, I mean, West Allegheny made the playoffs last year and finished in a three-way tie with Montour and Aliquippa. So anything can happen here as we go down the stretch. Blackhawk has had some pretty good offense, but not a whole lot of defense this season. So we'll see how this all shakes out as we get
Yeah,
into it.
and that Aliquippa win on the last play of the game last week, just keep that in your memory bank, everybody, because as you pointed out, I don't think it really is going to affect maybe the conference record as much as it's going to affect, I think, postseason seeding for Aliquippa when it's all said and done. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's very, very possible. I think you're right there. Yeah, I think that, you know, taking into consideration not only what they do in conference play, but having a win over a 5A opponent on their resume is going to look pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
huge.
On to 3A, where Freeport and Amani Christian are among the remaining undefeated teams. They won't play for a couple more weeks, but this one, last year Amani and Highlands kind of battled it out at the top. Freeport made the playoffs this year. Freeport brought back a lot and has set themselves up to be the top challenger to Amani. Amani's just absolutely loaded though, so we'll see how it shakes out. Shout out to East Allegheny getting their first win of the season by beating Deer Lakes. And the top three get the guaranteed playoff spots here. So it looks like Amani, Freeport, and Highlands are in pretty good position. Still a lot of games left to be played, though. But the game I'm excited about, which we'll talk about a little bit more, is this North Catholic against Amani Christian game, because these are two teams that can both absolutely light up the scoreboard, and both of them are 5-0. It's a non-conference game, but I mean, when you can get two 5-0 teams squaring off at this point in the season, that's an
That's
exciting matchup.
special.
Yeah, absolutely. A brief sojourn to the Interstate Conference before we talk about the brutally tough Western Hills. Southmoreland off to an incredibly impressive 5-0 start. Elizabeth Forward sitting there at 4-1. Elizabeth Forward's kind of been the dominant force in this conference last year after Bell Vernon moved back up. It was pretty much Elizabeth Forward and Bell Vernon before that were the top two teams. Elizabeth Forward's been the steady one. So Southmoreland has set themselves up to be the top challenger to EF this year, and we'll see how that game plays out in a few weeks. They both look really, really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be crazy here. I mean, even in, like I said, the Western Hills here too.
This one's absolutely. I mean, this is
This
just
is crazy,
it is
incredible.
how deep this conference is. Three guaranteed playoff spots. There's a couple more wild cards in 3A to be had. So, I mean, this conference could very easily get two wild card spots just by how things shake out. You've got Avonworth, the defending champions, who's undefeated. North Catholic, who's off to a 5-0 start and almost put up 300 points through 5 games. I mean, that's averaging almost 60 points a game there. Just, they're just lighting up the scoreboard. And then a Central Valley team who's bounced back with two very, very good conference wins after an 0-3 start in non-conference play. And a solid Beaver team who got that 1-point win over Hopewell. Hopewell was 3-0 in non-conference play and was lighting up the scoreboard and looking really, really good. So Hopewell's not out of this thing yet. They've got a chance against Quaker Valley this week to start to turn things around to get themselves back into the conversation. And really, I think for the WPIAL, if they start to, if Hopewell and Beaver finish in like the fourth and fifth spots, and they start to look at it and say, well, they played a 1-point game where Hopewell went for two in the win at the end of the game and didn't make it. Like that game
Hmm.
very easily could have gone to overtime. I think there's a very strong case to put both of those teams into the playoffs if we
Sure.
get to that point in the year. So, this just top to bottom, Quaker Valley's been better this year than they were the past couple years too. So
I
top to
know.
bottom, this is one of the toughest conferences in the entire WPIAL. All right. In 2A, we talked about that incredibly impressive South Allegheny victory over South Park. Steel Valley also beat South Park last week, the week before, whatever you want to say, in week 3. How about that? Apollo Ridge with that win over Shady Side. So this one, old Shady Side kind of sitting in the middle of the pack there, but South Park, now that they've lost to Steel Valley and lost to South Allegheny, if they want to get one of those 3 guaranteed playoff spots, really has to start turning things around. Now they have a non-conference game against Washington this week. to try and figure some things out. But after that, the rest of the way, it's all conference games. So they're pretty much going to have to run the table against Apollo Ridge, Shady Side, Olsh, and Ligonier Valley just to put themselves in position to have
Yeah,
that third place guaranteed playoff spot.
what has happened to Ligonier Valley? I mean,
They've dropped off a lot. I don't know because they were what, back-to-back District 6 champions before they
yeah,
joined the
right.
WPIAL. Yeah.
And move to the WPIAL for more competition, for more
Mm-hmm.
and better competition. And it's kind of backfired on them. I mean, and I've seen it happen before where teams have, taken these steps to try and, maybe thinking that they had that program that could translate, and boy, Ligonier Valley it's really fallen on hard times.
I agree. And I think one of the challenges for them too is just that, they've got a pretty rough travel schedule overall. And, they joined the WPIAL when they had a really good group of players coming up and coming through. And
Hmm.
then they just haven't quite been able to replace them, which, at the 2A level can be a struggle, right? You can
Sure.
you can have a good set of players and be like, oh, we're in good shape. And then 4 or 5 years down the line, just don't have the
It's
numbers
all
anymore.
cyclic. It's all cyclic for
Hmm.
boundary schools.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that if you're a non-boundary program, much easier to make those types of jumps. Even though I've seen schools, even like Bishop McDevitt, fail
Hmm.
at it. If you recall, they were a 3A back in 4 classifications. They were in 3A
Hmm.
and played up to 4A, and it just didn't work for them. They had to, go back. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, Lancaster Catholic was another one who won state championships and moved up, and it just didn't work.
Hmm.
So, um, maybe, and I don't know how this thing is cyclic. I mean, we're getting into that next cycle. I don't know if there's any talk about Ligonier going back to District 6 or not, but that might be in the cards.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything, but I do think the travel schedule is pretty rough on them because
Hmm.
a lot of these teams are pretty far away. Probably more than an hour's drive, I would say, for
Yeah,
a lot of them.
and
I
that
mean,
and that
Olsh is
affects
out by the
so
airport, for
much.
crying out loud. Like Olsh is on the other side of the city. Olsh plays their home games at
Correct. I
Moon.
know.
Like, right? Like you're driving from Ligonier to the airport. Like that's a long
That's a
drive.
long way. I mean, and look, it's not because they don't have two-way schools that they can't play in their own district, you know? I mean,
Right.
it's where let's just say of why State College plays in the Mid Penn Conference. It's because there's only 6A teams in that conference, so that's why they have to travel. And same thing with Altoona. There are no 6A teams other than the Mid Penn Conference, so they've got to do that kind of travel.
Yeah.
Ligonier Valley doesn't have to travel to the other side of the river to play to a team.
I just looked at it. It's 67 miles from Ligonier Valley to Olsh, where Olsh plays, right?
Yeah,
Like,
okay. We
so
just thought we'd bring that up.
yeah. And their closest opponent is Apollo Ridge, which is 38 miles away. Like
Yeah, that's an
that's
hour's drive. I mean,
yeah.
I can tell you that if if and yeah, obviously the recombining, of the Lancaster Lebanon League or whatever like that, if the closest team was an hour away, they would have never combined. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's a
Yeah.
lot of money to spend. And then remember, you're not only talking about that, but you're talking about cheerleaders, band, maybe.
Hmm.
How are they going to get any kind of like, support on the road? And what I mean by that is a lot of schools don't like playing teams like Ligonier Valley because there's no visitor gate for the
Right.
game. Nobody's going to drive 67 miles to watch a 2A football game.
and and right, and it gets challenging too, that not only them, when you have to go play out there, your logistics to go do that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the challenge of 6 classifications, right? That if if you look at kind of where the WPIAL has slotted Ligonier Valley here, if Ligonier Valley, I'll just go back. If Ligonier Valley was in 3A, like Derry, York, Greensburg, Mount Pleasant, Southmoreland, those are all pretty close to. I mean, they're not like right down the road, but I'd say
Right.
they're all
They're at
probably.
least on that side of the river.
Yeah, I mean, I would guesstimate roughly they're all probably within like a 30-mile radius, right? If I had to guess, I'll
Hmm.
look up. I'll just look up York here real quick. Um, okay, York is 30 miles away. So yeah, all the other ones are closer than that. So yeah, I mean, if Ligonier Valley, and this is the kind of weird psychology of it, right? That they're like, we're a 2A size school, so we're going to play in 2A. But because the WPIAL does conferences based solely on your classification size and doesn't do mixed classification conferences based on geography, like a lot of the rest of the state does it. Like if Ligonier Valley could play with their geography, if they could play with Southmoreland and Derry and York and Greensburg, Salem and Mount Pleasant, there's 5 opponents within 30 miles, right? Like that's a
Yeah,
much more conducive travel schedule. So
but
then
they're
you
not playing at a level where they could even consider
no moving up,
playing
right?
up.
No, no. Although I will say the first year of the sixth classification cycle, Apollo Ridge opted to play up because they were in a similar situation where they were going to be in 2A and only have like one team within 25 miles of them. So they opted to play up to 3A where they'd have like five out of their six conference opponents were within 20 miles. So
Wow. All right.
yeah.
Well, we better move on here if we
Okay.
expect to finish before midnight.
I guess we've been talking for about an hour so
That's
far.
okay,
Yeah.
but just in natural conversation, and that's what
Yeah.
I think is the best part about this program. And hey, I only want to say too, where's all of our chat tonight? I mean, we got a lot of live viewers. Nobody's really bothered to chime in. Everybody's been kind of sitting back. I think it's because of all the great stats, um, and stuff. But the live chats out there, gang. If you want to get on the program,
Yeah, if anybody wants to chime in, we're certainly willing to, hear what you
answer
have to
any
say.
questions.
Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to shoot them off to us here. All right. So next, oh wait, sorry, we didn't talk about the Century Conference here. Century Conference, Washington and Seton LaSalle are the best two teams here. Washington beat Waynesburg already. Waynesburg plays Seton on Thursday this week. So assuming Seton wins that game, and they've been doing pretty well over the last few weeks since they lost their season opener to a very good North Catholic team. I think Washington and Seton cruise this. The real question is who finishes third because Keystone Oaks did not look good in their three losses. They got two wins over the bottom two teams in the conference so far. So I'm not real convinced that Keystone Oaks is absolutely the third best team here. I think Waynesburg could work their way into that conversation. So we'll see how the rest of it plays out. But the two winless teams at the bottom do play this week. So someone will get knocked off the ranks of winless teams in the WPIAL this week. So good
Okay.
for whoever will win that game. In the Midwestern Conference, Western Beaver has separated themselves with a 5-0 overall record. Incredibly impressive performance overall from Western Beaver. And let's not forget, this is a team that lost their starting quarterback who transferred to a private school, Kiski Prep. So that just transferred to a private school. I'll just leave it at that.
Hmm.
But they had to replace the kid who set the WPIAL freshman passing record 2 years ago, and they haven't missed a beat. Incredibly impressive season so far from Western Beaver. So I
And
think,
Elwood's still hanging in there for
yeah,
legitimate playoff contention.
yes, absolutely. Elwood had a bit of a slow start to the season, as did Riverside, but both of them have bounced back with two wins early in conference play. So, three teams are guaranteed playoff spots here. Those look like the next two teams in line. And then the big Riv L rivalry game coming up in a few weeks between those two squads. But really, the games between them and Western Beaver, starting with the Riverside Western Beaver game this week, will pretty much decide who claims the conference title. On to 1A, where in the Big Seven Conference, Southside, Laurel, Neshannock, all off to very strong starts this year. I think Neshannock's probably the best of the bunch, but Laurel's been incredibly impressive this year. Just had that one little hiccup so far, but Laurel's got against Bishop Canevin, but Laurel has had some really nice victories in non-conference play over some of those 2A Midwestern Conference teams. So this one should be a good one between those top three teams as we
Mhm.
roll down the stretch. In the Black Hills Conference, Fort Cherry just got a dominant win over Monessen. This really, I think, is kind of just a waiting game until Fort Cherry plays Bishop Canevin in a few weeks. Canevin has kind of flown under the radar a little bit this year, but they're a really good squad. I mean, their two losses were to that Clarkson North team out of Canada and then to Seton LaSalle. So Canevin is a really, really good team, even though they're sitting at 3-2 overall. They just throttled Cornell this past week. They throttled Laurel a few weeks ago. So I think Canevin is absolutely right in the mix, not only for this conference title, but to, possibly make a semifinals run or more once we get to the playoffs, assuming everyone stays healthy. In the Eastern Conference, Leechburg just got a big win over Jeanette, which vaulted them tiebreaker wise above Clairton. Clairton obviously has that lengthy conference winning streak that we talked about earlier. Clairton taking on Jeanette, who's kind of been their arch rivals in 1A over the last 15 years since Jeanette moved down from 2A to 1A. But Clairton Jeanette always a good one, but Leechburg really now has set themselves up as the primary challenger to Clairton in this conference. So the Clairton Leechburg game in a few weeks will probably be the one that decides this conference title. Don't sleep on Greensburg Central Catholic, though. They got blown out by Clairton, but everyone gets blown out by Clairton. So we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But really, I mean, Jeanette got a wild card last year, was down in the playoff bracket, made a run to the semifinals. And so don't sleep on Jeanette, even though they're in the middle of the pack, though. They've got a lot of talented players on that team that are very, very capable of making noise, even as we get later into the season.
Absolutely.
Finally, in the Tri-County South, we've gotten to a point where, once again, like last year, California and Jefferson Morgan are pretty much on a collision course for the conference title. They'll play in week 9, so we'll play through the rest of the season. The real drama of the TCS will be who gets the third playoff spot here. Last year, even though there are 4 wild cards in 1A and 4 conferences, the Tri-County South was not given a wild card spot, so it was just the top 3 of the guaranteed spots of the teams that made the playoffs. So the drama here is who's going to get that 4th spot and get in. Bentworth and Avella have been off to pretty good starts this year. West Green just got their first win of the season with a win over Mapletown. So we'll see amongst those teams kind of who sorts themselves out as the third playoff team from the Tri-County South.
All right. Games of the week.
Games of the week. Yeah, I needed a quick drink of water there before I ran through these. So
You
we've kind
know,
of talked about, yeah.
I've tried to, I've learned to limit my water consumption. Otherwise, it's like I got to take a break during the show, and I don't want to do that. I think I've only, in all these shows we've done, I think I've only had to get up. I think one time, and that's when we ran way over. I think we were doing it like about an hour and 40. At the hour and 45-minute point, I finally said, "Hey, look, they're." So,
Yeah. I remember the one time we were doing one and you were out in I don't think it was Cumberland Valley. I think it was Hershey doing the state finals. Or maybe you were doing basketball or something and you were in like a conference room and they turned the lights out on you and then you had to
yeah,
go
yeah, yeah. No,
outside
no,
and
no.
finish the show.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Sure, right. It was remote, and I was right. They turned the lights out on me.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I do remember that. That was very early on. I think that was first year.
That may have been the COVID year. Yeah. All right. So our week 5 games of the week, Central Catholic against North Allegheny in a game that will pretty much decide the 6A conference title and the number 1 seed in the playoffs. So that is a massive matchup there. 2 undefeated teams in 5A between Upper St. Clair and Peters Township taking on each other to start Allegheny 6 conference play. And then Aliquippa and Newcastle kicking it off in the Parkway Conference. Neither of them have played a conference game yet. Avonworth and Central Valley in a rematch of last year's WPIAL championship game in 3A. So not just is it, two teams battling at the top of the conference, but it's also a rematch of last year's title game. Riverside against Western Beaver in that Midwestern Conference we talked about in 2A, another Clairton Jeanette rematch in 1A, and then the North Catholic Amani Christian game, which is a 3A game, but two teams 5-0 just lighting up the scoreboard. I mean, how can you not be excited about this one?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And
Gonna be a good one.
maybe I'm extra excited because it's my alma mater, North Catholic, that is. But both of these teams have just been blowing out everyone they've played so far, right?
Sure.
North Catholic's averaging 58 points a game. Amani Christian is averaging 43 points a game. Amani's only given up 22 points all year. North's given up a little bit more than that, but like this is strength on strength, offense on defense. It's just, this one's going to be a really, really good non-conference matchup.
I'm just sitting here out on the deck and talking football, whatever like that. How did I get away from like not being out here on the deck? This is like so ultra cool to be out here, and it will get cooler as the season progresses. But I mean, how great is that? I mean, for me, how great is this? Being outside and hanging out and talking football and really starting to get into the meat of conference schedules and really talking playoffs and stuff. There's just
Yeah.
no better time of year.
There really isn't a better time of year. This is the best. All right. So our week 5 broadcast from our friends of the show, our KDK radio news team will have the Upper St. Clair Peters Township game this week. And then our friends at WMBS out of Uniontown have the Laurel Highlands kicking off their conference schedule against Chartiers Valley, the upstart team that we talked about earlier. So our WPIAL Blitz rankings, mine were actually unchanged this week. And yours, I think you just had one slight change in 1A, the 1A, 2A
Yep.
rankings. But other than that, pretty much all the teams that we thought were good won and continue to be good.
Gosh, are we smart? and if it weren't for Western Beaver, I mean, for me, everything would have stayed the same. But yeah, and so in that regard, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I mean, we knew who were good. Now, especially like in the, I think in the 4A, 3A, I don't see a lot of adjustments in that. I don't see a lot of adjustments. I mean, other than like who's going to win this week between Central Catholic and North Allegheny. Um, I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement this year.
Well, I mean, starting at the top, we've got Central Catholic and North Allegheny playing, and Peters Township and Upper St. Clair playing. So, I mean, that's 2 top 5 matchups in our
Yeah,
5A, 6A rankings.
yeah, but
Amani Christian, North Catholic are both ranked in our 3A, 4A rankings. So there's another one there.
yeah,
Um,
Avonworth,
Avonworth, Central Valley.
yeah.
So yeah, there's a couple big games this week that could shake some things up a little bit. But I I would say, unless any of those games are just absolute blowouts, I don't know if they're going to really change my opinions on like that this is a good team, right? Like if Upper St. Clair beats Peters Township like by a touchdown or less, right? Like I might flip them in the rankings or, might just slide Peters a little bit, but I still think they're a top 5 team. So I probably won't change who I have on the list a whole lot unless like
Hey,
someone gets absolutely blown
we have
out.
a good question. I'm going to ask you this. John Nagel, thanks for contributing, John. Really appreciate it. John asks, what's the under over with North Catholic and Amani Christian?
120. No,
That's a good
um
question.
I would if I 85. 85 and a half. I'll
85.
give you a
Okay.
hook. 85 and a half. We'll see where it ends up, but yeah,
Okay.
I'll go with 85 and a
I
half.
buy that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Onward.
All right. So now we'll turn it over to you to talk about some of your news from the East
Oh,
with your
well, yeah. I mean,
mid-season
I've
power
been putting
rankings.
in my tidbits from the East here this year, and I thought I would privy everybody out west to my Eastern rankings, thanks to my friends at Game Day Men's Health, Lancaster, Exton, KOP. Get in the game. The Game Day Men's Health, quite honestly, is a national franchise with offices all over the state of Pennsylvania and nationwide. I'm affiliated with Lancaster, Exton, and KOP. They do a great job of keeping us old guys healthy. I mean, so but check them out. Um, yeah, look, I mean, 6A, 5A, um, just LaSalle. Obviously, you had the taste of that with their win over Pittsburgh Central Catholic. Harrisburg has taken on and won with all comers. Um, that's the one, quite honestly, that the WPIAL teams need to be most concerned with, because most likely Harrisburg is probably who's going to be the District 3 champ, and ultimately, I mean, it's going to be let's just say that's going to be a tough out for any WPIAL team to beat Harrisburg, even in Altoona this year. Obviously, Pittsburgh Central Catholic had their number last year. I mean, they're better this year. Let's be realistic. I mean, Harrisburg, and is Pittsburgh Central Catholic or North Allegheny better than they were last year? I don't know. You be the judge of that. St. Joe Prep hasn't won a game, but yet they're still number 3. Until somebody in Pennsylvania beats them, they're going to be in the ranking. Exeter Township is a 5A team that has just played lights out. I mean, just incredible football. And that's another team that the WPIAL teams, and I rank them so that the WPIAL teams need to start keeping an eye on some of these opponents, on who I think is ultimately going to make it out to Mansion Park. And I think Exeter and Harrisburg will end up playing, those WPIAL champs. Or the other thing too, the other wild card is, we need to start paying attention to what's going on with State College as well. They've had a great season. They took Harrisburg to like double overtime, so maybe it'll be State College in Harrisburg and Mansion Park, which was 2 years ago, for to get to there. 4A, 3A, Wyomissing gang. Their team, of all these teams that we've talked about over these years since we had the show, I think this is the best team that Wyomissing has put on the field since we started doing this show. Bonner Prendy, defending for a champ. They're really good. Susquehanna Township, I saw them last week. They are just loaded with talent. Pope John Paul II, and Twin Valley, who was number 1 in 4A for I think a couple of weeks last year. They're undefeated. So some really good teams. Schuylkill Haven, just key. I think they're still scoring points. They just like play, put up numbers. Oh, by the way, Southern Columbia lost a while, but they've blasted everybody else. They're back. Williams Valley, Troy, Marion Catholic rounded out.
Okay.
So we'll throw that in here periodically,
Yes.
and here we go.
Yes. So here we go with the debut of the WPIAL Blitz statewide rankings as well. So this is my little power rankings formula that I devised based on results on the field. I do take into account games against out of state opponents as well. I have a factor that I include for them. May not be 100% accurate, but better than nothing, I guess I'll say.
Yep.
And I'll say also that the more I've found over the couple years I've been doing this, the more inputs I put into it, the better it becomes. So this
Sure.
is the initial pass of just 4 or 5 entries per team. So in 6A, Harrisburg being the top ranked team, and 2 WPIAL teams appearing there. LaSalle College also being in the top 10. The formula loves these District 11 teams. It did last year too, and I don't quite know why it loves them so much, but it does. I think honestly, I think it's because their non-conference or their schedules, whatever they've played so far, their schedules, they play a lot of other 6A teams. So the way the formula is set up is like you
Sure.
get more points. Even if you lose to a 6A team, it's better than losing to a 5A team or a 4A
Hmm.
team, so on and so forth. So I think just because they play a lot more 6A teams, it likes them. But I remember last year there was a couple District 11 teams on the top of the rankings too. So and then in 5A, Springfield Delco, I was kind of surprised to see them come out number one on the list. And then the one other thing I'll mention, which was why I included the ratings, when I set up this kind of power rankings formula, I wanted to do it in a way that you could also compare teams across classification. So, like, you could arguably say that, like, some of these top 5A teams are every bit as good as, a top 10 6A team.
Hmm.
Um, so
I I really like the
yeah,
5A rankings there. Number 8 there, Redland. Maybe one of the biggest turnarounds in the state of Pennsylvania this year, going 5-0. Redland had really fallen on hard times over the last couple of years. I just wanted to make mention of them because I think that they're a great story. Um, I did effort last week. They ended up pulling one out against Elizabethtown. Solanco's a good team. Exeter, obviously, they're ranked in my behalf. Conestoga Valley, they're the object in the rear view mirror. I mean, they really look larger than what they appear right now, in my view. That's a team that probably could emerge to really challenge Exeter Township for the District 3 5A championship.
interesting. Good to know. On to the 4A, 3A ranks. This
Wow,
one
they like
also,
look at that job, and we didn't do the you did I my power rank or my rankings there. Look at there, Pope John Paul II and Susquehanna Township right there, baby.
yeah, North Pocono, I don't know anything about, so I was shocked to see them come out on top. Um,
That's a little bit rough. Yeah.
yeah, so but
Why am I missing all
nevertheless,
the way down to 10? I mean, remember, this is a power ranking. Their
yes.
opponent, the strength of schedule of their opponents is just bad. It's just not good. They played Southern Columbia, but that's about it for right now.
Right. So, and I think that's the difference between kind of the human element of the rankings is, you see, okay, how they look on the field versus my formula trying to take into account, okay, what teams did they play? What teams did they beat? What teams did they lose to? So on and so forth. In 3A, Avonworth being the top team, not really shocked there, considering the kind of
Markstrom out of
season.
Philadelphia. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. Um, and I think the surprise to me in the 3A rankings was that Northwestern Lehigh's not showing up as the defending. I think they were like
Yeah.
11th. They were like 11th though. So like they were right there. They weren't that far
And
off.
but that's a District 11 team not
Yeah.
getting the love from your formula. Hey,
Hmm.
look, let's do a shout out for Berwick there. 5-0. I mean, one of the names, one of the great names of the past, really putting it together this year. You've got them at number 6 in 3A there. And shout out to Berwick in getting back on everybody's radar screen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then in 2A and 1A, Farrell out of District 10 tops the 2A rankings with South Allegheny, who we've talked quite a bit about, being at number 3, along with a couple more District 12 and 11 teams as
Yeah,
your
there's my
Schuylkill
Schuylkill
Haven
Haven
team you
guys.
like. Steelton High Spire, who we're very familiar with out of District 3, Southern Columbia coming in at number 10, and then Belmont Charter topping the 1A rankings. And not only are they 5-0, I looked at their schedule and they've played all because they're in the, Philadelphia League.
Yeah.
They've played a bunch of teams from like 3A, 4A classification. So I'm not really surprised that my power ranking formula likes them because they've played higher classification teams out of
Hmm.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I had Line Mountain, Lackawanna Trail in there. But and the other thing too is that, like, for whatever reason, District 6 is just kind of like in La La Land. We don't really have it in the WPIAL rankings. I don't include them in the East, but Bishop Guilfoyle and State College are two teams from District 6 that people are gonna have to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially considering the fact that they are the defending state champions.
Yeah,
All
good
right,
stuff,
so
Ian.
that was our debut of the WPIAL Blitz statewide power rankings. We'll
I
update
love it.
those
I
each
just
week, and
love it. You know what it is? It's just great discussion.
it is. It is. So we'll keep those updated each week as we continue to go through, and we'll see how it plays out for the rest of the year as we get close to the playoffs. I think, but
There's there's
by the end of the year, we'll probably have a pretty good grasp on who the top teams are.
there's no other podcast in the state of Pennsylvania that puts out its own statewide power rankings, man. That's incredible stuff.
So I will say it was a lot of effort to get in, all the scores into a spreadsheet because I was a little bit, full disclosure, I was a little bit of a slacker this year and didn't start it like in week 0. So I had to go through like 5 weeks of games and try and get them all in.
That's okay.
But it wasn't, only a couple hundred games, right? It wasn't too bad. But at any rate, shout out to the Eastern PA football folks because they have a scoreboard on their website that makes it very easy to kind of
Yeah.
go through and
Oh,
move it all into a spreadsheet. And I
yeah,
just had to
Dave, correct, exactly right.
do a little bit of data cleanup here and there. But
Hmm.
all right, so our WPIAL look back from our friends at PA football history. 1965 was kind of the age of growth. A lot of growth in the region of Western Pennsylvania. So a lot more schools in the early to mid 1970s. Schools started to consolidate, but this was when there was a lot of growth both economically and everything else throughout the region. So Uniontown winning the AA championship, their second title in 4 years. Leechburg won the Class A title. This was their first of back-to-back championships. This was actually a picture I took when I went up to Leechburg a few years ago
Wow.
of the little banner in the end zone from the WPIAL champs from the class of 66 that were back-to-back champions. And then Oakmont won the Class B title that year. So our little look back to 1965, just a brief one.
Wow.
Next week, actually, when we get into 1975, will be post WPIAL Pittsburgh Catholic League merger. So at this point in time in 1965, the Pittsburgh Catholic League still had their own division that basically all the Catholic school teams played each other as the Philly Catholic League does now. They merged in 1972, 73. So, at this point in time, this was pretty much just the, public schools playing each other. And then once we get into the 1970s, you get the mixture of the public and private schools starting to play each
Nice. Good
other.
stuff. Good historical look back.
Yes. All right. So we've talked for a long time tonight, but if you want to hear me talk more, especially about the Steelers, you can check out my Steel City Blitz podcast, which is on Thursday nights on YouTube. And a little bit more of a PG-13 rating than this show, but if you listen, don't say you weren't warned. But it's a good time. It's fun. We talk and say some 4-letter words about the Steelers because they give us plenty of reason to. But thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Bruce, I know you're fresh set of downs has kind of been on hiatus a little bit, but gonna bring it
Yeah,
back here towards
just
the end of the
because
year.
my time allocation with PennLive now, I mean, I think people are already know that I'm working for PennLive now, and I'm broadcasting 4 games per week, which usually includes Tuesday night, which used to be Fresh Set of Downs night. So, um, trying to figure out, how we get that put together as we go down the playoff stretch. But and a lot of it just comes down to having the time to really devote to a second podcast there. So we throw in a few tidbits from the East, on the WPIAL show here, and really the power rankings cross over. So I think people watching the show are getting kind of a good look at the teams that they better start taking a look at down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will keep everyone in tune with that as we get closer to the state finals too, when we have our mega show with folks from the East and the West all coming together to talk about high school football.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Check out our social media channels. Check out my articles on steelcityblitz.com, where you can see my WPIAL standings page, WPIAL Games of the Week articles, all that other stuff. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Hard to believe the regular season's halfway over already, but we're gearing up for the stretch run here to the playoffs, and we're going to try and give you a quick run through every week, kind of like we did this week, of the standings for every conference, every classification, just to give everyone a sense for where their team is as we head towards the playoffs.
Yeah, and I even pulled out the old red skull there, or the lighted skull here this week. So yeah, just like old times, man. Well, listen, Ian, great job as always. And look, thanks to all you fans who tune into the show each and every week. We really appreciate it. And until next week at 9:30, after we put the kids to bed, it's the WPIL Blitz Show signing off. I'm Badge for Ian.